The Zorkar had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. They had crushed every species that stood in their way. No enemy had ever survived their wrath. Their war fleets moved like shadows, appearing suddenly and wiping out entire civilizations before vanishing again. To them, war was not just power, it was an art. High Warlord Cyroth stood in the command chamber of the battleship Doombringer, staring at the holographic projection of their next target, the blue-green world, spinning calmly in the darkness of space. Earth. Cyroth's golden eyes burned with amusement. Another weakling species, he muttered. His commanders around him chuckled. General Vraxis, the war strategist, spoke. Our scouts report primitive weapons. Their largest warships are nothing compared to our smallest destroyers. Good. Cyroth nodded. Then this will be quick. He turned to the assembled warlords. We give them one chance. Surrender or be erased from history. The fleet moved toward Earth. Hundreds of Zorkar warships, each one powerful enough to destroy planets, surrounded the human homeworld. Their energy cannons were charged. Their soldiers were ready. A message was sent to Earth. A warning. You are nothing. Surrender, and we may let some of you live. Silence. Cyroth frowned. Why is there no reply? They must be afraid, General Vraxis said, smirking. Cyroth was not so sure. There was something strange about this. Every species they had conquered had begged for mercy. Some had tried to fight back, but their weapons had been useless. But these humans, they said nothing. Finally, a response came. A single message. Come and take us. The warlords froze. For the first time in his long life, Cyroth felt something unusual. Was it hesitation? No. Impossible. Prepare the invasion, Cyroth growled. Burn them to the ground. The Zorkar fleet moved in, expecting an easy victory. They did not know they had just made the worst mistake in their history. The Zorkar fleet descended toward Earth, their warships cutting through the planet's atmosphere like unstoppable meteors. Cyroth stood on the bridge of the Doombringer, watching with satisfaction. The humans had given no further response, no desperate last-minute surrender, no pathetic attempt at negotiation. They are fools, General Vraxis sneered. They had their chance to beg. Now, they will be forgotten. Cyroth nodded. Begin orbital bombardment. We will make an example of their largest cities. The warships adjusted their targeting systems. Energy cannons charge. The first wave of destruction was about to begin. Then, everything went wrong. Alarms screamed across the Doombringer's bridge. The lights flickered. The ship trembled violently. High Warlord, an officer shouted. Our systems, something is shutting them down. Cyroth's eyes narrowed. Explain. I don't know. Our shields are failing. Our targeting systems have been overridden. Across the fleet, the same chaos was unfolding. Ship engines sputtered and died. Cannons refused to fire. The mighty Zorkar fleet, feared across the galaxy, had been blinded and crippled in an instant. Cyroth clenched his fists. What is happening? General Vraxis turned, his expression no longer confident. Sir, it's the humans. They're using some kind of. Before he could finish, the fleet-wide communication system crackled to life. A voice, smooth and calm, filled the bridge. Welcome to Earth. Then the first human counterattack began. On the ground, the Zorkar soldiers had landed, expecting to march through weak human defenses. Instead, they found nothing. Empty streets, abandoned buildings, no people. A Zorkar captain growled. Where are the humans? His answer came a moment later, when the first squad vanished. One moment, they were walking through the ruins of a city. The next, they were gone. No screams, no struggle, just gone. Another squad disappeared, then another. Panic spread through the ranks. This isn't a battle, a Zorkar officer whispered. This is a trap. High above, Cyroth's eyes burned with fury. He had thought this war would be over in minutes. Now, for the first time in his life, he was beginning to doubt. Xyroth slammed his fist against the command panel of the Doombringer. The mighty warship, along with the rest of the Zorkar fleet, was still frozen. Systems disabled, weapons useless. His warriors on the ground had stopped reporting in. This was impossible. The humans shouldn't have this kind of technology, General Vraxis muttered. His mandibles clicked in frustration. We scanned their planet. Their defenses were primitive. This isn't possible. Xyroth's cold gaze locked onto him. Possible or not, it's happening. Find out how. A desperate voice crackled over the comms. High Warlord, we need evac. The humans. Static. Then another voice. They're watching us. Silence. The bridge crew exchanged nervous glances. For the first time in Zorkar history, they were afraid. On the ground, the once mighty Zorkar warriors moved like prey. Their confidence had turned to paranoia. They had come expecting to slaughter humans in open combat, but there was no battle. There was only the hunt. Sergeant Gruel led his remaining soldiers through the ruins of the city, sweat dripping down his scaled skin. He had lost nearly half his unit, and he had no idea how. There's nothing here, one of his soldiers growled. Gruel turned. That's what scares me. A shadow moved. Before he could react, one of his men screamed and vanished. The squad fired wildly at the darkness, their plasma weapons lighting up the alleyway. Nothing. A whisper crackled through their comms. You don't belong here. The remaining soldiers froze. The voice, it wasn't just coming from their radios. It was inside their helmets. Gruel's breathing quickened. We need to get back to the landing zone. Now. They moved fast, faster than elite warriors should, because something was chasing them. Then the sound started. Footsteps where there should be none. Echoes in the wrong direction. Heavy breathing. Except it wasn't theirs. One soldier stopped. Wait. Do you hear? A hand shot out of the darkness and yanked him away. No gunfire. No screams. Just silence. The squad broke into a run, discipline forgotten. They weren't warriors anymore. They were prey. Above, Xyroth's claws dug into the armrest of his command throne. His fleet was useless. His army was vanishing. And his enemy refused to show itself. For the first time, he realized the truth. This wasn't a battle. This was a massacre. The mighty Zorkar, once feared across the galaxy, had been reduced to desperate survivors. Their weapons, ships, and strategies, useless. The humans were not fighting a war. They were hunting. Aboard the Zorkar flagship, Doombringer, High Warlord Xyroth stared at the tactical display, his sharp claws gripping the armrests of his throne. Entire squads had gone dark. No distress calls. No bodies found. Just vanishing. General Vraxis' voice trembled. Sir, our warriors are reporting strange things. Shadows moving where they shouldn't. Weapons failing at the worst moments. And the worst part, they say the humans are whispering in their helmets. Xyroth bared his fangs. That's impossible. Human technology is primitive. They should be on their knees, begging for mercy. Vraxis hesitated. They're not. They're making us beg. A message suddenly flashed on the command screen. A simple, chilling text. You are the invaders. You are the hunted. Xyroth's heart pounded. Humans shouldn't have access to their systems. This was impossible. Then, all the lights on the bridge shut off. Total darkness. For the first time in his life, the High Warlord of the Zorkar felt something he had never known. Fear. On the surface, the last Zorkar squad. Sergeant Gruel and his last few warriors were running. Their armor was scratched, their weapons low on energy, and their morale shattered. The once proud conquerors of the Zorkar Empire were now prey. Keep moving, Gruel barked. Behind them, something moved in the shadows. One of his soldiers turned to fire. only for his rifle to spark and fail. A second later, something yanked him into the darkness. No scream. Just gone. The remaining warriors didn't stop. Grohl's breathing was ragged as they reached an old human bunker. He slammed the door shut, panting. We need to call for evac." One of his soldiers, shaking, tapped his helmet. No signal. Then, through their comms, a voice whispered, "There is no escape." A loud bang echoed through the bunker. Then another, and another. Something was inside. Grohl turned, weapon raised. The lights flickered, and the nightmare truly began. Aboard the Doombringer, Cyroth's claws trembled as his bridge crew desperately tried to restore control. The humans had hacked their entire fleet. They had never seen an enemy do this before. Vraxis whispered, "This isn't a war. This is a punishment." A final message appeared on the main screen. "You came to conquer us. Now, you understand. We are not the weak ones. You are." Cyroth's breath caught in his throat. The Zorkar had ruled the stars for centuries. No species had ever challenged them like this. No enemy had ever made them feel so powerless. And now, they finally understood. The humans weren't just fighting them. They were erasing them. The mighty Zorkar, once the terror of the galaxy, were crumbling. Their warships vanished without a trace. Their warriors went missing in the dark. Fear spread through their ranks like a disease. And the worst part, the humans never spoke. They never asked for surrender. They never made demands. They simply hunted. Aboard the Zorkar High Command vessel, Warlord Cyroth paced the bridge, his claws clicking against the metal floor. His officers avoided his gaze. They were once proud Zorkar warriors, feared across the stars. Now, they were afraid. Vraxis, his second in command, spoke in a hushed voice. "Sir, another fleet has gone silent." Xerath spun around. "How many ships?" Vraxis hesitated. "All of them." Silence fell over the bridge. The Zorkar never lost full fleets. Even against the strongest empires, they would at least retreat, regroup. But this was different. No distress calls. No escape pods. Just silence. Xerath slammed his fist against the control panel. "How are they doing this? What kind of monsters are we fighting?" Then, the ship's lights flickered. A message appeared on every screen. "You call us weak. You thought we were prey. Now, you understand the truth." On Zorkar Prime, the homeworld, the heart of the Zorkar Empire was in chaos. Cities burned. Military bases fell without a single shot fired. The great Zorkar warriors, the pride of their people, were running. Fear had broken them. Inside the Grand War Hall, the Council of Lords argued, "We must surrender." Open communication with the humans, one elder demanded. "Surrender?" Another scoffed. "We are the Zorkar. We have ruled for centuries." A young officer ran in, his face pale. "It's too late," he whispered. "They are already here." The council chamber doors slammed shut. The lights flickered, and the screaming began. Aboard the human command ship, deep in the void of space, Captain Elias Gray watched the incoming reports. The Zorkar's fleets were gone. Their homeworld had fallen. Their warriors, the ones who called humans weak, had learned the truth. A comms officer turned to him. "Sir, the Zorkar leadership is begging for surrender." Gray exhaled. "And?" The officer hesitated. "And the rest of the fleet wants to know what to do next." A long silence. Gray looked out at the endless void. "They wanted to rule us," he murmured. "They wanted to erase us." He turned to his officers. "Now we decide if they get to exist at all." The once mighty Zorkar Empire had collapsed. Their fleets were gone. Their homeworld was in ruins. But the humans still hadn't spoken. They hadn't declared victory. They hadn't accepted surrender. They simply waited. And that was worse than war. Aboard the Zorkar High Command's hidden base, Warlord Xyroth stood in a darkened war room, his claws shaking as he looked at the holoscreen. Every Zorkar-controlled world flickered red. Lost. The few ships that remained in their fleet refused to fight. Their warriors, their mighty conquerors, were broken. Xyroth's voice was hoarse. "Are we certain?" "They will not answer." Vraxis, his last surviving general, nodded. "No response. We have sent surrender messages, peace requests, begging for negotiations. Nothing." Xyroth clenched his fists. What do they want? No one had an answer. On a human warship, the Silent Hunters, Captain Elias Gray stood on the bridge of the Hades, the flagship of the human fleet. He watched the incoming transmission requests from the Zorkar. Message after message. Begging. Pleading. His officers waited for orders. Finally, Gray spoke. Let them wait. The humans had learned. The Zorkar had never given mercy when they ruled. They had never listened to surrender. They had wiped out entire species just to make a point. Now they would feel that same helplessness. The galaxy watches in fear. Other species, ones who had once feared the Zorkar, now trembled at the silence. The humans didn't just win. They didn't just conquer. They erased. The Galactic Council called for emergency meetings. Some begged the humans to stop. Some wanted to send fleets to protect what was left of the Zorkar. But no one moved. Because if the humans could do this to the Zorkar, who would be next? The final decision. On board the Hades, Captain Gray stood before his officers. We have proven our point. They know fear now. The room was silent. Then, a younger officer hesitated. Sir, should we answer them? Gray looked at the flashing distress calls. Then, he did something no one expected. He smiled. Let's make them sweat a little longer. The once feared Zorkar Empire had been reduced to silence. Their fleets were destroyed. Their armies were broken. Their leaders were begging for mercy. But the humans had not answered. The entire galaxy held its breath. Would the humans destroy the Zorkar completely? Or would they show the mercy that the Zorkar had never given to others? No one knew. And that was the scariest part. Aboard the Hades, the human flagship, Captain Elias Gray stood before the holographic display, watching the incoming messages from the last Zorkar leaders. One final transmission played. Warlord Xyroth's voice was barely a whisper. Please, we surrender. We will give you anything. Just let us exist. The mighty Zorkar, who had wiped out entire civilizations, who had laughed at the idea of mercy, now begged like cornered prey. The bridge was silent. Every human officer stared at the screen, waiting for their captain's words. Gray turned to his communications officer. Send them an answer. The officer nodded and sent a single message. It had only 4 words. The decision is yours. The Zorkar's breaking point. On the last surviving Zorkar station, Xyroth read the message. His claws trembled. His generals stood frozen. What does it mean? One whispered. They are making us decide. Xyroth realized. His breathing was heavy. They are not killing us. But they will not save us either. It was worse than destruction. It meant they had to face what they had done. No fleet would come. No rescue was arriving. They had no allies, no armies, no empire. The Zorkar had ruled through fear, and now no one wanted to help them. The galaxy watched as the Zorkar tore themselves apart. Some fought over control, some fled into deep space, and some simply gave up. The war was over, and the humans had won without firing another shot. The final warning. The Galactic Council convened in a desperate meeting. Every major species was there. Every leader was afraid. The Zorkar had been unstoppable until they met humans. And now, those same humans had done something far worse than simple war. They had taken everything from the Zorkar and let them destroy themselves. A trembling voice spoke up. The humans could have wiped them out, but they let them suffer instead. A silence spread across the room. Then the council leader whispered the words that everyone was thinking. We must never cross the humans. Final scene. Aboard the Hades. Captain Gray watched the galactic broadcasts. The Zorkar were in ruins. The council was terrified. The message was clear. A junior officer hesitated. Sir, was this the right way? Gray didn't answer immediately. He just watched the stars. Then, finally, he spoke. It doesn't matter if it was right. He turned to the bridge crew. It worked. The legend of humanity had been written in the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same again.